The Galactic Council chamber was the largest meeting hall in known space, a dome so wide that even the echoes seemed to get lost before returning. Delegates from dozens of alien civilizations sat in high-backed seats arranged in a ring, each surrounded by a soft glow of their homeworld's emblem. The air hummed faintly from translation devices, and the distant thrum of the station's power core could be felt more than heard. Every seat was filled, which meant something serious was about to happen. Daniel Raines had never been here before. He was a junior human diplomat, sent on what he thought would be a routine observation trip. His orders were simple: sit, listen, and report back. But the moment he stepped into the chamber, he felt dozens of eyes, or whatever passed for eyes, turn to study him. Some were curious, others hostile, and a few seemed to be measuring him like a merchant measuring the weight of goods. At the center of the ring, the Speaker of the Council, a tall, insectoid being with shimmering green carapace plates, struck the crystal podium. The sharp chimes silenced the murmurs in the room. "Order," the Speaker announced, voice translated into smooth, neutral tones in every delegate's ear. "This emergency session is now in progress. The subject, the sudden and unchecked growth of Terran influence." The words rippled through the chamber like a wave. Daniel sat straighter. Terran influence? That meant Earth. He glanced toward the other humans present, 3 of them, all far more senior than him. At their center sat Ambassador Hale, a man with silver hair, calm eyes, and a posture so relaxed it seemed almost careless. One delegate, a reptilian alien from the Sar Dominion, leaned forward. "For years, the humans have been expanding their trade networks. They offer aid, technology, and credits to struggling systems, like only to bind them into long-term agreements. This is not charity. This is a quiet conquest." The delegate's voice was heavy with accusation. Another alien, this one from the crystalline ethylene species, joined in. "They show us outdated warships during fleet parades, yet their production numbers in certain sectors suggest far more activity than they admit. What are they hiding?" Murmurs swelled again. Daniel felt his throat tighten. The council was painting humans as manipulators, as deceivers. But what caught his attention was Hale's reaction, or rather his lack of one. The ambassador sat with a faint, unreadable smile, as if every word was expected. The speaker raised a long, jointed arm for silence. "The council must decide whether Earth poses a threat to the stability of the galaxy. The choice will determine whether sanctions, inspections, or other measures are required." The words "other measures" carried a heavy weight, and Daniel understood them clearly: military action. He shifted uncomfortably, his fingers curling into fists beneath the desk. This wasn't what he'd been told. He thought the meeting would be about a border dispute or trade tariffs, not the survival of Earth's reputation, or worse, its safety. A delegate from the cold and shadowed world of Cathar spoke next. Their voice was deep and slow, like ice breaking. "We have tolerated human expansion because we assumed they were a minor race with limited reach, but their colonies now sit near our borders. Their ships appear and disappear without warning. We demand full transparency." Daniel's gaze flicked to Hale again. Still no reaction. In fact, the ambassador looked almost amused. That was the strangest part. He wasn't defensive, he wasn't flustered, he was waiting. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, a signal that the council's secure data feeds were active. A large holographic display appeared in the center, showing a map of the galaxy. Human territories glowed in soft blue. Even from here, Daniel could see how far those blue patches had spread in the last decade. Trade routes snaked across multiple sectors, touching dozens of alien worlds. The map was impressive, but to the council, it was evidence. "Too much influence for a species barely a century into interstellar travel," muttered a delegate from the insectoid Vresh collective. "Something is wrong." The speaker called for Earth's representative to address the accusations. Hale rose slowly, his steps measured as he approached the podium. Daniel watched him closely, half expecting a fiery defense or a long explanation. Instead, Hale simply nodded to the speaker, adjusted the microphone, and said, "The Terran Union is committed to peace. We have always acted in the interest of mutual benefit. If the Council has doubts, we invite a full inspection of our fleets and facilities." The chamber froze. Daniel felt his own breath catch. That wasn't the defensive denial he expected. It was an open challenge, an invitation. The alien delegates began whispering to each other, their voices sharp and urgent. The speaker tilted their head. You agree to this inspection? Of course, Hale replied with that same faint smile. We believe transparency is the foundation of trust. Daniel's mind spun. Back on Earth, military secrets were guarded tighter than vaults. For Hale to agree to a full inspection was unthinkable, unless he knew something no one else did. The vote was called. Nearly every delegate agreed to send inspection fleets to Sol within 2 standard days. The decision passed with overwhelming support. The alien faction seemed pleased, convinced they would finally see the true scale of human capabilities, and prove that Earth was weaker than it claimed. As the meeting adjourned, Daniel walked beside Hale, trying to hide his confusion. Sir, he whispered, why did you agree to that? You know they'll tear apart every system looking for. Hale cut him off with a quiet chuckle. Let them look, Daniel. Sometimes the best way to win a game is to let your opponent think they've already won, until they see the board from another angle. Daniel frowned. What are they going to see? Hale's smile deepened. The truth. And I promise you, it will be the last thing they expect. They stepped out of the chamber into the long corridor that led to the docking bays. Alien guards stood along the walls, watching silently. The air felt heavier now, as if the entire station was holding its breath. Daniel realized something unsettling. The inspection wasn't just a formality anymore. It was a countdown, and when it ended, the galaxy might never look at Earth the same way again. Hale didn't seem worried. If anything, he looked like a man who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The council chamber was crowded again, every seat occupied by alien leaders with tense expressions. The air felt sharper today, charged with a mix of curiosity and hostility. As soon as the speaker gave permission for open discussion, the accusations began to fly. The first to speak was the tall, scaled delegate from the Sar Dominion. His voice carried a hiss between words, his long tail swaying behind his seat. Humans pretend to be harmless, he said, glaring at the human delegation, but in truth, they are spreading their reach through the galaxy like a slow-moving infection. They buy loyalty with trade, then wrap their partners in contracts they cannot escape. He slammed his clawed hand on the desk for emphasis, making the nearest delegates flinch. Daniel sat a few seats away from Ambassador Hale, feeling the sting of the words even though they weren't aimed directly at him. His instinct was to speak up, to argue, to defend Earth's honor, but his training told him to remain silent. Still, it was hard to keep his hands from tightening into fists. Before he could calm himself, another voice joined in. It came from the crystalline ethylene representative, whose transparent body caught the light and scattered it in sharp beams. We have studied human ship movements, she said, her tone like the ringing of glass. Their parade fleets are outdated and small, but the raw materials they import suggest a much larger navy is being built in secret. They hide something. The murmurs began again, growing louder as more delegates whispered theories to each other. Daniel could hear snatches of conversation. Words like weapons, covert colonies, and hidden fleets repeated again and again. A short, thick-bodied alien from the Krex assembly leaned forward, his deep-set eyes glaring. When humans arrived in our quadrant, he growled, they offered to protect our shipping lanes from pirates. We agreed. Then their freighters became the only ones moving freely. They replaced the pirates, but they smiled while doing it. Daniel glanced at Hale, expecting to see some reaction. The ambassador's calm was almost unnerving. His eyes moved slowly from speaker to speaker, his expression unreadable. It was as if he were watching a play he'd already seen a dozen times before. The speaker tapped the crystal podium again to restore order. Delegates, the insectoid voice buzzed through the chamber, Earth is accused of concealing its true capabilities, manipulating trade, and quietly expanding military influence. These are serious charges. The Council must decide how to proceed. A representative from the shadowed world of Cthar rose next. His species form was hard to see clearly, wrapped in layers of black fabric and armor. His voice was low, cold, and certain. We assumed humans were weak. We assumed their reach was small. Yet their colonies grow near our borders, and their ships can vanish from scanners entirely. That is not the behavior of a small power. It is the behavior of a predator preparing to strike. Daniel's heart pounded harder. Each accusation made the humans sound more dangerous, but also more guilty. In this room, perception mattered more than truth. If enough voices agreed that Earth was a threat, the Council could vote for sanctions, or even war. And yet, Hale still did not speak. The other human envoys sat silently as well, their hands folded neatly, their faces neutral. The tension was so thick that Daniel could feel it pressing against his skin. He kept glancing at Hale, silently begging him to say something, to counter these words before they poisoned every ear in the room. The Ethely delegate pressed her advantage. If humans have nothing to hide, let them prove it. Open every dockyard, every hangar, every production facility to Council inspectors. Show us the truth. Daniel's breath caught. That was a dangerous suggestion. No one opened their entire military infrastructure for outsiders to examine. It was unheard of in galactic politics. Even allies kept secrets. The speaker's green, many-faceted eyes turned toward Hale. The Terran delegation has heard the request. How do you answer? All eyes shifted to the human side of the chamber. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Hale stood. His movements were unhurried, as though he had all the time in the universe. He walked to the podium with measured steps, every gaze following him. Daniel expected the ambassador to deny the accusations, to argue that Earth's growth was natural, fair, and legal. He braced himself for a long speech filled with statistics and reassurances. Instead, Hale simply said, "If the Council believes an inspection is necessary, Earth will welcome it. We have nothing to hide." The room erupted. Dozens of voices spoke at once, some in shock, some in excitement, and some in disbelief. Daniel's mouth opened slightly. Welcome it? Was Hale serious? The speaker struck the podium again for silence. You agree to an unrestricted inspection? Hale smiled faintly. Of course, trust cannot grow without transparency. Let your fleets come to Sol. Let them see everything. Daniel stared at him. Agreeing to such a thing was like opening your home to strangers and telling them to check under every bed. It was reckless, unless you knew something they didn't. Around the chamber, alien delegates exchanged looks. For the first time, Daniel noticed uncertainty replacing confidence. They had expected resistance. They had expected humans to refuse and thereby confirm suspicion. But Hale's acceptance had thrown them off balance. The speaker called for a vote. One by one, the delegates signaled their agreement. The decision was nearly unanimous. The inspection would happen in 2 standard days. Alien warships and investigative teams would enter Sol system, and the truth about Earth's strength would finally be revealed. When the session ended, the humans rose and prepared to leave. Daniel walked quickly to catch up with Hale. Why would you do that? He asked under his breath. You just gave them permission to look at everything. They'll find... I don't even know what they'll find, but... Hale stopped walking, turning to look at him. They'll find exactly what I want them to find, he said calmly. And when they do, they'll remember this day for the rest of their lives. Daniel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's air temperature. He didn't know what the ambassador meant, but the way Hale said it, it sounded less like a hope and more like a promise. The council chamber felt even more dangerous than before. The decision for the inspection had been made, and now every alien delegate seemed eager to push Earth into a corner. The speaker allowed open discussion again, and the tone quickly turned from accusation to something sharper, trap setting. The representative from the Vresh Collective leaned forward, his insect-like mandibles clicking as he spoke. If the humans truly have nothing to hide, then they will allow our inspectors full and unrestricted access to their fleets. Not just what is docked in orbit, but every military facility, every hidden outpost. We will leave no asteroid unchecked. His black eyes glistened, confident in the trap he was building. The delegate from the Sar Dominion hissed in agreement. Yes, complete transparency. Let the inspections be unannounced in some locations. We must see the truth before they can prepare a display. The suggestion drew approving murmurs from around the chamber. Daniel sat rigid in his seat. It was clear now, they weren't just planning to inspect Earth's navy. They wanted to humiliate humans, to expose them as small and weak in front of the entire galaxy. The aliens expected to find a handful of outdated ships, maybe some defense stations in poor condition. Once those images were broadcast across the sectors, Earth's influence would be shattered. What disturbed Daniel most was that the humans weren't resisting. Ambassador Hale hadn't moved to object. His face was calm, almost relaxed, as if he had been waiting for these conditions. The speaker looked at him directly. Terran delegation, do you accept these inspection terms? Complete and unannounced access? There was a brief silence before Hale stood. His hands rested lightly on the podium as he said, "We accept." His tone carried no hesitation, and the words echoed in the quiet room. The reaction was instant. The alien delegates leaned toward one another, whispering quickly. Some looked suspicious, others smug. To them, this was a victory. They believed humans had walked into the snare willingly. Daniel's stomach tightened. After the meeting adjourned, the corridor outside buzzed with alien chatter. Daniel hurried after Hale, lowering his voice so the others wouldn't hear. "Sir, do you understand what they're going to do? They'll send their best scouts, their most advanced scanners. They'll uncover everything." Hale stopped in mid-stride and looked at him. "Good," he said simply. "That's the point." Daniel blinked, confused. "The point? But won't that make us look—" Hale's voice stayed calm, but his eyes were sharper now. "Daniel, in politics, you must let your opponent believe they are in control until the moment they realize they're not. They think they will find weakness. What they will find is truth, delivered in a way they will never forget." Daniel followed him to the transport docks, still uneasy. Around them, alien guards watched with blank expressions. The human delegation boarded their sleek diplomatic shuttle, the doors hissing closed behind them. Once inside, the soft hum of the engines filled the silence. The other human envoys avoided eye contact, as if they already knew more than Daniel. Finally, Hale spoke to the pilot. "Set course for Earth. Priority 1 clearance." The stars stretched into thin lines as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. Daniel sat across from Hale, trying to understand the plan. "You're not worried at all, are you?" "Worried?" Hale gave a small smile. "Daniel, we have been preparing for this day for years. Every ship movement, every fleet exercise, every bit of data we've allowed to be seen was part of the design. The Council thinks this inspection is their idea. In truth, they are arriving exactly when and where we want them to." Daniel's mind spun. "You mean the fleets?" Hale didn't answer directly. He simply looked out the viewport, watching the streaks of light from hyperspace. When they see what's waiting for them, the galaxy will understand that Earth's restraint has been a gift they should value before they lose it. The rest of the journey passed in heavy silence. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something far larger than himself, something carefully planned long before he ever set foot in that chamber. When they reached Earth orbit, the inspection fleets were already on their way. Sleek alien cruisers with scanning arrays and sensor drones. The timing was set. In 2 standard days, they would arrive in Sol system, ready to pull apart every human secret. From the observation deck of the orbital station, Daniel watched Earth spin slowly below. Fleets of ships moved between the planet, the moon, and Mars, their silver hulls catching the sunlight. On the surface, everything looked like normal trade and transport. There was no sign of the massive, hidden strength Hale hinted at. He turned to the ambassador. "They're going to see all this and think they were right about us." Hale's answer was a quiet, almost amused yes at first. Daniel didn't press further. Something about Hale's confidence made questions feel pointless. Instead, he stood there, staring out at the familiar blue and white sphere of Earth, wondering what was hidden behind its peaceful image, and what would happen when the rest of the galaxy saw it for the first time. The day of the inspection began with a cold silence over Sol system. The alien fleets arrived in tight formation, their hulls dark and gleaming as they slid out of faster-than-light travel. Dozens of ships from different council members appeared one after another, taking up positions near the edge of the system. They were here to watch, record, and expose. Daniel stood on the command deck of the main Earth orbital station, staring at the massive view screens. From here, the alien ships looked like silent predators circling their prey. Their sensor dishes were already unfolding, scanning every corner of the system. He could almost feel the invisible waves passing through the station, probing for secrets. "Council vessels are requesting clearance to begin full inspection," the communications officer reported. His voice was steady, but Daniel noticed the tightness in his jaw. Ambassador Hale gave a small nod. "Granted." Within minutes, Swarms of small inspection craft broke away from the alien flagships. They headed toward Mars, Luna, the asteroid belt, and the orbital yards around Earth. Daniel expected Hale to look nervous now, but instead the man walked to the viewport and folded his hands behind his back. From the first scans, the aliens found exactly what they had hoped for: aging cruisers, modest patrol ships, and a few newer models that seemed far from threatening. The images began transmitting back to the alien motherships. Daniel could almost hear the smug thoughts of the delegates watching from orbit. So the humans are weak after all. But then something strange happened. One of the inspection ships, scanning the far side of the moon, sent a high-priority alert. Their sensors had picked up an energy signature far too large for the small defense platform they expected to find. The Council observers demanded a closer look. Hale agreed instantly. The inspection craft descended into a dark crater near the lunar South Pole. At first, there was nothing, just shadows and jagged rock. Then the rock itself began to shift. Panels disguised as lunar stones slid open, revealing the sharp lines of a colossal warship buried beneath the surface. The alien crews watching from orbit froze in shock. The ship was unlike anything they'd seen from Earth before, sleek, black, and bristling with advanced weaponry. As the panels continued to open, more ships became visible, row after row, all hidden deep within the moon. This is impossible, Daniel heard one of the alien translators stammer over the comms. Hale's voice was calm as he addressed the inspection leader. "Oh, that's just one of our storage yards. Would you like to see the others?" While the alien crews were still reeling, another set of coordinates lit up on the shared display, this time in the asteroid belt. As the inspectors approached, entire asteroids peeled open like metal flowers, revealing cavernous hangars filled with destroyers, carriers, and troop transports. None of them had ever been detected by outside scans before. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes wide. He had known there would be a surprise, but not this. The hidden fleets were enormous, far larger than any public estimates of Earth's military strength. And these weren't half-finished builds. These ships were armed, fueled, and ready for battle. The alien inspection team scrambled to cross-check the readings, but the data was undeniable. Energy cores were fully charged. Weapon systems were active. Hulls were coated in advanced materials that bent sensors away from their location. Every hidden yard was a fortress in itself. By now, the Council observers in orbit had gone completely silent. The smug confidence from earlier had evaporated. They had come expecting to see a weak power exposed. Instead, they were watching a sleeping giant wake up before their eyes. The last location Hale allowed them to see was far beyond Mars, near the edge of the Kuiper Belt. There, hidden behind ice-covered dwarf planets, was something even more terrifying: an array of massive orbital fortresses, each armed with weapon platforms larger than most alien capital ships. Shield emitters glowed faintly along their surfaces, and Daniel could see the heat shimmer of active reactors even from the distant camera feeds. The alien delegates demanded to know why these weapons had never been declared to the Council. Hale simply replied, "Because we preferred peace, and we saw no reason to make our friends nervous." The way he said friends made Daniel's skin prickle. It wasn't a threat exactly, but it wasn't gentle either. As the inspections continued, the aliens realized something even more disturbing. These fleets had been hidden for decades. Every piece of cloaking, every disguised asteroid or crater had been prepared long before Earth had a seat on the Council. This wasn't a sudden military buildup. This was a plan, patiently waiting for the right moment to be revealed. In the observation deck, Daniel glanced at Hale. "You knew this would happen." "I did," Hale answered softly. "But knowing is not the same as showing. Today, we showed them." Down in the Council ships, the mood was changing fast. Some inspectors were sending frantic reports to their home governments. Others simply stared at the footage, their voices hushed. The idea that Earth had been holding this kind of power in reserve and had chosen not to use it was more unsettling than open aggression. When the last inspection craft returned to orbit, the Council fleets didn't immediately leave. They lingered at the edge of the system, as if unsure whether to stay or run. Hale stood at the viewport, watching them. "They came to measure us," he said quietly. "Now, they're measuring themselves." Daniel realized the ambassador was right. The Council had expected to find a game they could control. Instead, they had just learned that they'd been playing by Earth's rules all along. And somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt a flicker of pride, mixed with the awareness that the galaxy would never look at his homeworld the same way again. The council chamber was quieter than Daniel had ever seen it. The delegates sat in their seats, their strange faces lit by the soft glow of the massive hollow screens. On those screens, the images from the inspections played again. Hidden warships under the moon, massive carriers in the asteroid belt, and the towering orbital fortresses far out in the Kuiper belt. The footage spoke for itself, but the silence was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Ambassador Hale stood at the central podium, his posture straight but relaxed, as if this was just another normal meeting. His voice carried calmly across the chamber. You have now seen the Terran Union's fleets. You have inspected our shipyards, our defense platforms, and our manufacturing lines. We did not hide them from you. We invited you to look. And now you understand something important. We have not been building for conquest. We have been building for peace. A ripple of murmurs went through the delegates. Some of them still looked doubtful, others uneasy. Daniel could see in their eyes that they were remembering every past negotiation, every time Earth had agreed to a compromise. Now, knowing the truth, they were beginning to wonder if those compromises had been kindness or strategy. The crystalline Ethely delegate leaned forward, her voice ringing like chimes. If you have had such strength for so long, why hide it? Why pretend to be weak? Hale's expression didn't change, because we believe diplomacy should come before dominance, because we believe trust could grow without fear. But make no mistake, Earth has always been prepared. His eyes swept the chamber slowly, meeting the gaze of each alien leader in turn. We hope to never need to show you this side of us, but the Council asked for the truth, and we gave it to you. The Sar Dominion's reptilian delegate hissed, his scaled tail flicking against the floor. Peace through secrecy is not peace, it is deception. Hale's voice was steady, but there was steel under it now. Would you have treated us the same if you knew our strength from the start? Or would you have moved against us, afraid of what we might become? We learned early that a sleeping giant is left alone far longer than a giant standing with its fists raised. Daniel noticed the effect those words had. The alien leaders shifted uncomfortably, some glancing toward each other, clearly thinking back to the early years of Earth's entry into galactic politics. Hale was right. If they had known the full truth back then, alliances would have shifted, and Earth might have faced endless challenges. The delegate from Cthar spoke next, his voice cold and measured. You speak as if restraint is a gift. It is, Hale replied without hesitation. Restraint is the reason your fleets are still whole, your borders untouched, and your worlds free from the shadow of our war banners. Restraint is the reason we trade with you instead of ruling you. But don't mistake kindness for weakness. A heavy silence followed. The meaning was clear. Earth's military could crush many of the member states if it chose to, but it had not. That was the real message. The hollow screen behind Hale shifted to show something new. Rows upon rows of massive shipyards in high orbit above Neptune, each one active, each one producing at a speed that shocked the delegates. Next came footage of training grounds on Earth and Mars, thousands of soldiers moving in perfect coordination, their weapons gleaming. Then came the factories. Silent, efficient, producing more equipment than any outsider had guessed. Daniel could see the realization dawning on the Council. This wasn't just about defense fleets. They were looking at an industrial capacity that could support the largest war effort in modern history, if Earth ever decided to unleash it. Finally, Hale stepped away from the podium, letting the images speak for a few moments longer before they faded. He returned to his seat with the same calm expression he'd worn all day. Daniel glanced at him, wondering how someone could carry that much confidence without showing the slightest hint of arrogance. The Speaker of the Council broke the silence. The inspections are complete. The evidence is undeniable. Earth possesses strength beyond what any member state suspected. The Council must decide how to respond to this revelation. Several delegates spoke at once, some calling for new treaties of friendship, others demanding restrictions, a few suggesting closer alliances. But none of them spoke of war anymore. The fear in their eyes had replaced the earlier arrogance. Daniel sat back, letting it all sink in. The trap had worked perfectly. The Council had demanded to see Earth's true power, expecting to find weakness. Instead, they had been shown a force so vast it could have been a threat to them all, and yet it had never been used against them. That combination of strength and control was more intimidating than open hostility could ever be. When the session finally ended, Hale rose and adjusted his jacket. As they left the chamber, Daniel walked beside him, still processing what had just happened. "You knew this would change everything, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Hale gave a faint smile. "Of course. Now they understand that our friendship is not something they can take for granted. It's something they must value, because they've seen what the alternative could be." Daniel thought about that as they stepped into the docking corridor. The Council now knew that Earth had been holding back for years, not because it was incapable, but because it had chosen peace. And in politics, he realized sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't a gun or a ship. It was the choice not to use them. The moment the council meeting ended, the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates spoke over one another, their voices sharp, panicked, and urgent. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of overlapping languages. Daniel could hear fragments of what they were saying, calls for emergency meetings back home, demands to prepare new defense plans, and hurried whispers about changing trade agreements before Earth decided to act differently. Some alien leaders pushed away from their seats and left immediately, speaking into their comms as they went. Others stayed, still arguing with their neighbors, clearly trying to decide whether to treat Earth as a dangerous enemy or a potential ally. The calm arrogance they had shown before the inspections was gone. Now their movements were tense, their expressions tight. Daniel followed Ambassador Hale out of the chamber. The wide hallway outside was just as chaotic. Alien guards and aides rushed alongside their leaders, sending urgent messages to their governments. The air was filled with the low hum of encrypted comm signals. Daniel had never seen so many powerful figures moving with such visible worry. He walked quickly to keep up with Hale. "They're scared," Daniel said quietly. Hale didn't slow down. "Good. Fear makes people think twice before acting against you. And right now, that's exactly what we want." They passed a group of delegates from the Thar worlds. The tall, cloaked figures stopped speaking when Hale walked by. Their dark, reflective eyes followed him until he was out of sight. Daniel could tell they were already reconsidering the way they had treated the human delegation in the past. When they reached the docking bay, a line of security officers waited to escort them to the human shuttle. Even the station guards seemed different now, more respectful, less casual. Daniel noticed that none of them made direct eye contact with Hale. It wasn't fear of him personally, it was the weight of what he represented. Once aboard the shuttle, the door sealed with a hiss. The pilot's voice came through the intercom. "We have clearance for immediate departure, sir." Hale gave the order, and the shuttle lifted away from the docking bay. Through the viewport, Daniel watched the massive council station shrink behind them. In the distance, he could see the alien inspection fleets still lingering at the edge of the system. They hadn't left yet. It was as if they didn't know whether they should go home or stay and learn more. "Why are they still here?" Daniel asked. "They're trying to decide what this means for them," Hale said. "Some will want to befriend us immediately. Others will prepare for the possibility that we might one day stop being friendly. Either way, they will be busy, and busy neighbors are less dangerous." The shuttle slipped into faster-than-light travel, and the view outside stretched into streams of light. Daniel leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. "You've been planning this for years, haven't you? This whole thing, letting them think we're weak, letting them demand the inspection, it was all part of the strategy." Hale gave a faint smile. "We didn't control every detail. But yes, we knew that one day they'd grow suspicious enough to want proof. We made sure that when that day came, the proof would be exactly what we needed it to be." Daniel shook his head. "And now?" "Now," Hale said, "we watch." When they arrived back in Sol System, the change was immediate. Messages began flooding in from alien governments, requests for new trade deals, offers for military cooperation, even apologies for past insults or hostile actions. Some were formal and carefully worded. Others were almost desperate, as if afraid that Earth might remember old grudges. At the same time, reports came in from intelligence networks. Some alien worlds were quietly increasing their own ship production. Others were strengthening their border defenses. The fear Hale had spoken of was spreading fast, and it was reshaping the galaxy's balance of power. Daniel spent hours reading the reports in the orbital station's communications hub. The pattern was clear. Earth's position had changed overnight. Where once humans had been treated as upstart newcomers, now they were recognized as a major power. Every decision Earth made from now on would carry more weight and more consequences. Later that evening, Hale called a small meeting with the senior members of the Terran delegation. Daniel sat at the far end of the table, listening closely. The ambassador's tone was calm, but there was no mistaking the authority in his voice. "We've shown them that we are not to be underestimated," Hale said, "but that does not mean we should start throwing our weight around carelessly. Power without control breeds enemies. The lesson today wasn't just for them, it was for us as well." One of the senior envoys leaned forward. "Do you think they'll ever test us again?" "Oh, they'll test us," Hale replied, "but not soon, and when they do, it will be with more respect and more caution." The meeting ended with quiet agreement, but Daniel could still feel the tension in the air. The game had changed, and everyone knew it. That night, standing by the viewport, Daniel looked out over Earth. Lights glimmered across the continents far below, peaceful and steady. It was strange to think that from the perspective of the Council, this peaceful blue planet was now seen as one of the most dangerous forces in the galaxy. Behind him, Hale stepped into the room. "You're thinking about the future," he said. Daniel nodded. "I'm thinking about how different it looks now." Hale's voice was low but certain. "It doesn't just look different, it is different. Today we stopped being the newcomers. From now on, every leader out there knows that Earth's friendship is worth keeping, and that losing it could cost them everything." Daniel turned back to the window, the reflection of the ambassador beside him. The galaxy beyond seemed a little smaller now, and Earth a little larger. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that the fear he had seen in the council chamber wasn't just about what Earth could do. It was about what Earth might choose to do, and the fact that no one, not even the council itself, could predict that anymore. The next council session was very different from the ones before. The air no longer carried the smug confidence that had filled the chamber earlier in the week. Now, every delegate entered with measured steps, their eyes shifting toward the human section before taking their seats. There was no loud chatter, no casual small talk. The memory of the inspections still hung over them like a shadow. Daniel noticed the change immediately. Even the most hostile representatives, the ones who had led the accusations against Earth, now avoided direct confrontation. Some offered polite nods in Hale's direction. Others simply kept their eyes down, as if unsure how to speak to a power they had underestimated so badly. The speaker called the meeting to order. "Delegates, we are gathered to discuss the matter of Earth's recognition within the Galactic Council." The words were formal, but Daniel could hear the weight in them. This wasn't a small vote. Whatever they decided today would reshape Earth's place in galactic politics. The representative from the crystalline Ethely world spoke first. "The inspection has shown us what Earth is capable of. They possess military power far beyond what we believed, but they have used it with restraint. This council should recognize Earth as a major power, equal to the oldest members among us." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The reptilian Sar Dominion delegate tapped his claws on the desk. "Recognition is one thing. Trust is another. How do we know their restraint will last? We cannot ignore what we have seen." Hale rose slowly, waiting until the room was quiet before speaking. "You cannot know for certain. That is the truth. No one can ever know what another will do in the future. But you can look at the past. In all our years among you, we have not conquered your worlds, even when we could have. We have not interfered in your governments, even when invited to. We have offered trade, aid, and cooperation when asked. That is our record. That is our proof." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the delegate from the Thar world spoke. His voice was low, but the words were sharp. "Perhaps we should admit that we treated you as weak because we thought you were. Now we must treat you as strong because you are. But strength changes the balance of this council." Hale gave a slight nod. It does. And balance is not something that stays the same forever. It shifts, it adapts. The question is, do you want that balance to include us as partners, or do you want to stand against us? Daniel felt the tension rise at those words, but he could tell they weren't a threat. They were a choice. Hale wasn't forcing anyone's hand. He was making them think about the consequences of pushing Earth away. The speaker called for a vote. One by one, the delegates cast their decisions. The holo screen at the center of the chamber lit up with the results. Overwhelming approval for granting Earth full recognition as a major galactic power. Even some of the Council's old rivals had voted in favor, perhaps out of caution, perhaps out of respect, perhaps both. The speaker's voice echoed through the chamber. By the will of the Council, Earth is hereby recognized as a primary power among the member states, with all rights and responsibilities that title entails. There was a formal round of applause, but it was restrained, almost cautious. Daniel knew the sound wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement. Every delegate in the room now understood that Earth's voice carried more weight than ever before. When the session ended, several representatives approached Hale. Some spoke in friendly tones, offering to strengthen trade routes or arrange cultural exchanges. Others were more guarded, testing his reactions with careful questions. Hale treated them all the same, calm, polite, but never giving away more than he intended. Daniel followed him out of the chamber, his mind buzzing. "You've done it," he said quietly. "We've gone from being underestimated to being treated like one of the top powers in the galaxy. That was the goal, wasn't it?" Hale gave a small, knowing smile. Recognition was part of the goal. But influence, that's the real prize. From now on, our suggestions will be considered more seriously. Our offers will be more valuable. Our threats, if we make them, will carry more weight. And all of that comes without firing a single shot. They stepped into the bright corridor leading to the docking bay. Alien envoys they passed now moved aside respectfully, a gesture Daniel had never seen before. It was a subtle change, but it spoke volumes. As they boarded their shuttle, Daniel glanced out at the alien fleets still stationed in the area. Some had already sent messages requesting joint military exercises. Others had invited Earth to participate in high-level technology exchanges. The same governments that once doubted humanity's place in the galaxy were now trying to pull them closer. During the flight back to the orbital station, Hale sat in silence for a while, then finally said, "Today, the galaxy took a step closer to seeing Earth as we see ourselves. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a new kind of game, one we intend to win." Daniel didn't answer. He just looked out at the stars rushing past, knowing that the next time they sat in that council chamber, the humans wouldn't be seen as guests. They would be seen as equals, or perhaps as something even greater. As the final session of the council ended, the delegates rose from their seats and began filing out. The room was still filled with quiet tension, the kind that lingers when something permanent has changed. Daniel noticed that no one spoke in the casual, dismissive way they had before the inspections. Every glance toward the human delegation now carried a trace of caution, as if each alien leader was carefully measuring their words and actions. Ambassador Hale remained seated for a moment longer, letting the others leave first. He didn't appear rushed, and Daniel could tell it was deliberate. It was as though Hale wanted the council members to see that Earth wasn't desperate for their approval. Earth already had what it needed. When the chamber had mostly emptied, Hale finally stood and walked toward the main exit. Daniel followed close behind. In the grand corridor, alien leaders and their aides moved quickly, some heading for private ships, others to secluded meeting rooms. A few of them nodded politely to Hale, their expressions stiff. One delegate from the Sar Dominion even paused to offer a formal greeting, something Daniel knew would have been unthinkable a week ago. As they made their way toward the docking bay, the murmur of voices in different languages filled the air. Daniel caught fragments of conversations, discussions about revising trade treaties, requests for joint military exercises, and whispered concerns about Earth's long-term intentions. Inside the docking bay, the human shuttle waited with its ramp lowered. The polished surface reflected the overhead lights, and security officers stood nearby, watching for any disturbance. Before boarding, Hale paused and glanced back toward the grand corridor. Several alien leaders had stopped to watch them leave, their eyes following the ambassador's every step. When they were inside the shuttle and the door sealed shut, Daniel finally spoke. They're all looking at us differently now. Hale settled into his seat and adjusted his jacket. They should. Today, they learned the truth, that Earth's friendship is a choice we make, not a position we're forced into. Daniel frowned slightly. Do you think they'll ever forget what they saw? Hale's gaze shifted to the viewport where the Council station's silver shape gleamed against the backdrop of space. No, and that's the point. Every time they consider crossing us, they'll remember the fleets, the fortresses, the shipyards, and they'll remember that we kept them hidden until now. The shuttle lifted from the docking platform, drifting slowly away from the station. Outside, the alien ships that had come for the inspections were still in position, but they kept their distance. No aggressive scans, no hostile moves, just silent observation. Daniel realized it was no longer the kind of watchfulness that came from superiority. It was the careful watching of someone who had been surprised and didn't want to make another mistake. As the engines shifted to faster-than-light travel, the view outside turned into streaks of light. Daniel leaned back in his seat, letting out a slow breath. You know, he said, before all this, I thought we were always fighting to prove we belonged in the Council. Now, it feels like they're the ones who have to prove they belong with us. Hale gave a small, almost amused smile. That's how influence works. It's not about forcing people to follow you. It's about making them realize they need you. When they arrived in Earth orbit, the change in their status was already clear. Messages flooded the communication channels. Offers for new trade partnerships, invitations to high-level summits, and formal apologies from governments that had once ignored or insulted human diplomats. The orbital station's control deck was busier than Daniel had ever seen it. Every channel was active, and every message seemed to be a reminder that the galaxy's balance had shifted. Later that night, Daniel found himself standing alone at one of the station's observation windows. Below him, Earth turned slowly, its blue oceans and white clouds lit by sunlight. It looked so peaceful, almost fragile from this distance. But he now knew the truth. Hidden in its orbit, in its moons, in its distant outposts, Earth was anything but fragile. He didn't hear Hale enter until the ambassador was beside him. They stood in silence for a few moments, looking down at their homeworld. Then Hale spoke quietly. Do you know why I said what I did in the chamber? Daniel shook his head. You mean when you told them we're their friends by choice? Yes, Hale said, because I wanted them to understand that our restraint is not weakness. It's an active decision. We have the power to shape the galaxy, but we choose not to dominate it. That choice is what makes our friendship valuable. It's also what makes it dangerous to lose. Daniel thought about that, about the way the alien leaders had looked after the inspections. They hadn't just been shocked by Earth's power, they'd been unsettled by the idea that it had been there all along, unused. Hale turned to leave, but paused. Remember this, Daniel. In politics, strength is important, but control over when and how you reveal that strength, that's what makes you truly untouchable. Daniel stayed at the window long after Hale left, watching the slow turn of the Earth. Somewhere beyond the station's view, in the hidden shipyards and deep space fortresses, the fleets waited, silent and ready. The galaxy now knew they existed, and that knowledge alone was enough to change everything. Far away in the Council's private channels, messages would still be passing between alien governments, replaying the images, debating strategies, and wondering how to keep Earth close without provoking it. Daniel realized that for the first time in history, humanity wasn't just surviving in the galaxy, it was shaping it. And from this point forward, no one, not even the most powerful civilizations, would be able to ignore what Earth could do if it ever stopped playing nice.